No, I have had a busy day. That's not your fault, and it's not your problem. I'm just letting you know how my day's been. It's been busy. Now, yesterday I did get this wet finished. Yesterday it was 39 degrees at my house, which is a great temperature for drying things quickly, but broadly speaking, it is way too many degrees. So this looks much as it did last week. It is still a nice open weave. Let me find a way to hold this up in a way that's helpful. There, that's not it. Just a second. Bear with me, there we go. So it is still that nice open weave, so it's a little bit lacy, a little bit open, a little bit see-through. The colours are still behaving themselves beautifully, and the texture is definitely being a texture. I think I've described that rather well. So there's no bloom or shrinkage with this yarn because it is synthetic. I think it's viscose predominantly. I should have checked before I came out, but I didn't. I think it's viscose, polyester and acrylic. So there isn't any bloom, by which I mean, oops, these gaps in the middle here would fill in with the yarn because it would swell or bloom in the wet finishing process. And there's no shrinkage because it doesn't do that. But what there is more softness. And I'm holding it up really badly. If I do that, you'll see that it's softer. I'll show you properly, maybe. Maybe not. There we go. So what there is more softness. So it's a little bit drapier. I don't know that you would necessarily look at last week's video and then look at that and go, oh, that's got more drape to it. I might just be trying to, convince myself, but it is definitely softer. And that's because a lot of these yarns have a coating on them from the manufacturing process, and also for commercial reasons, keeps it nice and clean looking in the shop. Same with the fabric. And so once you've given it a wet finish, all of that manufacturer's coating comes off and you're left with the softer yarn, which is why you don't really know what yarn's going to do unless you've washed it. Now for the fringe, I was pondering a couple of options. So as you can see, there's that texture in there, which is just loosely spun sections of the polyester thread. And twisting a fringe with that kind of texture in it can work, but I always find it looks a little bit clunky and a little bit lopsided and a little bit weird. So I was going to twist it and I thought, well, it's going to be weird because of all that texture. And then I thought I could plait it. But then I thought I'd have to count my ends, and I don't do that. I do if I'm doing it like a proper pattern, but I so rarely do a proper pattern. So in the end, what I've done is left them loose, as you can see, nice loose fringe, but I have gone along the very bottom and tied a little knot. And you can see under those knots, if I get that out of the way so that you don't have the orange behind it, you can see under those knots it has frizzed in the wet finish, and that's why I put those knots in, because the fringe otherwise would just fall apart. It would frizz out and fall apart over time, and that's not what we're here for. So I may or may not trim. I mean, I'll have to trim that one. That's gone very long. I trimmed a few. Look at that. I missed that one completely. But I might trim under those knots just to tidy it up a bit. But those little tiny knots are just to stop the fringe from exploding over time. Now, the 70s kitchen scarf is still on the loom. Yeah, I was going to work on it this week, and as I mentioned, it has been hot, and I have also been working, which is taking up so much of my time. So I did think about doing it on Sunday night, and then I didn't. I simply didn't. I played Stardew Valley instead, but I do have something on the big loom. So the 70s kitchen scarf, yes, it will be done. It will be done because I want my little loom back. I want to warp up my little loom with other projects. So it will be done. Will it be done next week? Maybe. I don't know. But I do have something on the big loom, and I'll show you that right now. Things are often very fresh on the loom in my Wednesday videos. However, this might be a new record. This is barely over an inch of weaving. So this got warped up this afternoon. It's a scarf, as you can tell by the width. I'm not utilising the full width of my loom this time. Again, if I could get that other one off the little loom, anyway, that's on me. So this got warped up, and then I did the hem stitching. Well, obviously I started weaving and then did the hem stitching, and then when I advanced the warp I realised I've got a problem. You can see here, this line and this line, they should both be nice and straight, but we've got a little bubble. Couple of possibilities. There might be something in the felt, or the felt might not be sitting properly, which is, I've got the felt here to cover the knots on the front beam, because when you tie your warp to the front beam there's knots, you need to cover them up. Alternatively, if that's not the problem, then there's a problem with the tension that wasn't apparent before I started weaving. So I'm going to take this felt off, and replace it with the fabric, because I've got some thinner fabric that will work and hopefully not be quite so lumpy. If that doesn't work, I'll probably just ignore it, to be honest, between you and me. I mean, there's things I can do to fix that. I can do some stuff on the back beam with weights and whatnot. I can undo this weaving and then retie. What I'm probably going to do is ignore it. But I'll see if I can fix it with the felt first. Now, the yarn is stunning. This is sent to me by my friend Debbie because she's gorgeous and amazing and incredible, actually. And so I've written very helpfully on the label, warp, to remind myself which one was the warp, because I knew I would forget. It is Hawthorne Cottage Yarns, 8-ply merino. That's not in shot. 8-ply merino in the blue, green and aqua colourway. So this is the brighter of the two yarns. It's got these gorgeous rich aquas in and these wonderful greens that are just spectacular. So I'm trying for quite an open weave, because this is stretched out, it's under tension, and once it's off tension, that will fill in those gaps already, and then when it's wet finished, everything will fill in the gaps. So I'm hoping that there'll be a good balance between the two colours, and then I'll have this nice bright fringe. Now for the weft, which is a different yarn, which looks like this. So this has got the green, and it's got some of the olive and the bright greens. Well, not really a bright green, but an olive green in there. But then it is essentially like, it's a bluey grey, or a grey blue. It's somewhere between blue and grey. And I think it's dark enough to be a good contrast to the warp, while also bringing its own visual interest. That sounded good, didn't it? Anyway, that one is, oops, that held that up badly. Friday Yarn Deep Creek. And it's a good name for that, because it does look like a deep creek. My labels are all squished up like that, because once I've wound yarn into a cake, and this is the one I've warped up from, but once I've got a cake of the yarn, I like to put the labels in the middle, so that when I put them back in the stash, when I pull them out in 6 months to 6 years, depending on how long it takes me to get to them, I know what it is. So, because the label's on the inside. This one needs rewinding though, because I've used all of the middle to warp up with. The other thing that's happening with my loom is that it is, it's been a real trooper. It's been a real trooper, this loom. I got this loom in 2017, and when I put it together, I was not particularly careful. I was not as careful as I should have been. Things are a little bit off kilter, and for the most part that has been okay, but we are getting to the stage now where it does need to have all of the bits that can be taken off it, need to be taken off it, and reattached properly this time, because it's getting a little bit rickety. But it is going to be okay to weave a scarf, and it's probably going to be okay to weave like 6 or 8 other things, because I will forget to do that between projects. And I will get to this stage and go, oh, I was actually going to disassemble this loom and then put it back together again. Oh well. I'm not very good at having looms out of service, 70s kitchen scarf notwithstanding. Now, I can't remember exactly when I mentioned it. I don't think it was last week, but it might have been. You know how January is like really short but also really long? Anyway, so I was talking about a triangle loom, because you can buy a loom which is literally just a big triangle. I'm making a big triangle shape now, so you know what I'm talking about. And you can get those at a 7-foot length, so the top of those triangles is 7 feet long. So you can do a shawl on them. Basically, they're like a big pin loom, and you can just weave a shawl. Don't know what that's about. You can just weave a shawl on them, and you've just got this one piece wonderful thing. And I looked at those, and they are expensive and also big, because that's 7 feet. You can also get smaller ones, but if you're going to go big, if you're going to buy a massive pin loom, buy a massive pin loom. Anyway, don't have room in my house and couldn't really justify the expense, so I justified a smaller expense instead. So I've been all over the internet looking for triangle looms, on the basis that if I can get a smaller triangle loom, I can make smaller triangles and then join them all together into a wrap, because I've got that yarn that I want to make into a triangle. It's just saying triangle to me. I'm not here to argue with the yarn. So I looked all over the internet, like not all over the internet, like I wasn't looking at irrelevant places, and apparently nobody in Australia sells triangle looms other than the little tiny ones which are about that big. That's not a triangle. That sort of is. There we go, look. I knew I'd get there. So you can get little tiny ones about that big. Too small for my purposes. So I've ordered one from the United States. The postage was horrendous. I don't think it's actually going to cost the person that much to post it, but what am I going to do? You know, so what I need is somebody in Australia to start manufacturing and selling triangle pin looms, please. Thank you very much. Anyway, in the meantime, I have ordered one from the United States. It is, I think, 17 inches. 17? Yes, because 1.5 feet is 18, so 17 inches. So once that arrives, I will be weaving triangles on it out of that yarn. I'm going to put a photograph of the yarn in because I keep talking about the yarn and I don't think I've shown you the yarn. This is the yarn that I'm talking about that wants to be a triangle. And then once I have woven, I think I counted I needed 15. It depends on how wide I want the shawl. Then I'll join them together and then I will have a big triangle and I will be very excited about having my big triangle. So it is cheaper than one of the big grown-up ones. It's a little bit more work, but it's going to be, I think, an interesting effect. I'm excited to get it. It's supposed to be here in early February. So we'll see if it gets here in early February. For the price I paid for postage, I want it hand-delivered by David Tennant, but apparently that's not an option. Anyway, that's all I have for you this week. You have a lovely rest of your week. Take care of yourself, and bye for now.